is up, and it's good.
You're listening to The Extra Point, hosted by Phil Ruskin. Welcome.
What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of The Extra Point. It's your boy, Phil Ruskin. I am hanging out with my guy, as always, Kendall VanDerBilt. What's up, dude?
Yo, man. Hey, I'll try not... No bad weather, no storms coming, so, let's talk some rookies.
For those that missed the show last week, Kendall was here for all of about, I think, the intro and maybe 1 minute, and then he had a Wizard of Oz situation where he thought the tornado was going to just take him off there, so... Glad you're here. I'm glad there was no damage to the house. You and the fam are all safe. Let's talk some football, man. It has been a busy, that's the best word I can think of, busy last week or so with free agent signing. I covered a lot of the free agent signings last week, so we're not going to get into those. This is obviously a Dynasty podcast. It is a rookie show tonight, so that's what we're going to get into. But I didn't have a chance to ask you this question last week, Kendall. Is there a free agent signing that stands out to you above the others? That, or it could be a trade. We all woke up to a big trade this morning. Well, I did. I'm on the West Coast. You guys probably were at lunch already. But Jalen Waddle to Denver. For those that didn't know, is there a new? I'll call it a new player in a new team that kind of stands out to you, whose dynasty or fantasy value you think is increased by his new team, new home?
It's crazy. I think every single one of the moves there were very few that were nothing burger, in my opinion, like even these smaller moves. And I know the cap increased, so moves that we would consider somewhat smaller, like Dobbs. I don't think any of us see Dobbs in like a super phenomenal light, right? But because of the money and a few metrics, like it's a little more amped up, and it's still very noteworthy by displacement. So I won't mention the Ken Walker one, although I do think it's pretty significant in a lot of ways, but more for the NFL than for actual fantasy football implications. It affects one player more than anything. I think the Michael Pittman trade affects two teams in particular. Like, I've been a huge Alec Pierce truther, and I think that does... I think it does a lot for Pierce. I also think it does a ton for Jonathan Taylor. I think it really means that offense is a play action or give it to Taylor. I mean, without Pittman having more consistency out there, I also think it's massive for Warren. I think Warren at the tight end position for the Colts is an unreal winner. Him and Josh Downs are probably two of the most overlooked assets. Everyone's going to go Alec Pierce through the moon. Look at the money. Josh Downs was almost going for like a late first-round pick with what he could be for that offense, assuming Warren didn't become a thing. So, windows up, everything up for Warren. I think Downs could be a sleeper in the middle of the field if Warren's blocking a little bit more. And honorable mention, I am buying the Packers wide receivers right now because I think there's good coaching, good offense. I think Love is an underrated quarterback. He's always been efficient. If he ever gets the chance to throw it above an NFL average rate, the run game's just been too good for too long. If that regresses or an injury occurs and he's got to do a little Jacoby Brissett situation, I think there's a lot of room left for improvement across the board. I don't know who's going to emerge. My favorite buy right now is actually Jayden Reed. Remember we and you did the show over a year ago, and we did a segment talking about how Jayden Reed is almost worth 2 first-round picks we should probably sell. Nailed that. I think we're at it's too low. I think he's a better NFL player than when he's going for, and I think you can buy him for a second right now. I like that as pickup.
Interesting, because in the annexation of Puerto Rico, I happen to own both Jayden Reed and Mr. Golden, Kendall.
I may have taken a look at both of them.
You have some seconds next year that could interest me, so stay tuned. We might have a live on-air trade. I'm going to give you 2 names that are less sexy because I think the obvious answer is, and I'm sorry, Kendall, I missed your first answer. I had an internet connection issue, so if you said this already, apologies. But the obvious answer is everyone's going to get Ken Walker steamed up to the moon because of the Chiefs and all the, he finally doesn't have sharps, and that's fine. I don't care. We talked a little bit about that last week. If you want to take If you want to take KW3 at the 1-2 turn in a dynasty startup, if you want to price him as the RB6, RB7 in an auction draft, I'm actually okay with that, right? I may not personally do that, but I understand why some people would. So let me give you 2 less sexy names, and here's the reasons why I'm going to give them to you, right? You know, the coach in me always likes to give the why. If you bought the Ja'Cory Krosky Merit Lotto ticket last year, I think you have a window where you still have some value left, because I don't think Jeremiah Love is going to make it to the Commanders. So if you have a Bill ticket, Rashad White's on a very small contract. He's okay. He doesn't scare me, right? They brought in, my brain just went blank. Chris Rodriguez is Jr. is out. So I'm sorry, they brought other guys that are they're just guys, right? I'll have to pull it. Give me 1 second to pull it. My point is that as of today, I think you have a timeshare between Rashad White and Bill. And if one of those guys can either win the job or can score some early season touchdowns, I think you have a window to sell. And Jerome Ford, thank you. I would sell both of those guys. And right now, if you were to try to sell those guys today, you're getting nothing. You're not getting anything. Nobody wants those players. You'd have to put them in a package of players to acquire somebody else, or to, I'll give you, a second rounder plus, Bill to get up to trying to think of a good name here, but man, it's tough because there's so many running backs that I think you just can't get up to. My point is, I think you can get something out of them.
Especially to a running back room that's depleted.
Yeah.
You can work through very 2 different. If you're a dynasty manager, when you're running back depleted, the amount of copium, something could happen, I need a prayer, running back class, what am I going to do? Like, that player is actively looking for a prayer. Give them one. They're going to take it for what it is, and they're gonna see through rose-colored glasses a little bit. I've been on that side of the coin, and I could see enough of it. Maybe he does his Woody Marks impression for a year. I don't think we think it lasts, but he might be a meaningful producer, and not even just a
I think that's my point. Is I think you could get Bill and a second, and see if you could get Monty. See if you could get Montgomery. That maybe doesn't get it done, but see if it's a second, and a third, and Bill to get up to Monty, right? So put something together where I think you could get Monty. I think has 2 more years in Houston where he's going to have some fantasy relevance, and then that's probably it. But I just don't see a path forward if Jaden continues to develop. If they bring in a receiver, right? I just don't see a world where their future is this running back by committee. So I do think Bill is a winner as of today, and I think he stays relevant. So he is a person that I am trying to, if I have him, hope that he has a good first half of the season and then sell him high for something, because I just think the wheels are going to fall off. The other player I want to talk about for just a minute, and I would say he was the winner because of the Max Crosby trade, but that never happened. So it scares me a little bit now, more than it would have last week, is Zay Flowers. Because when Crosby went to the Raiders for all of 72 hours, that meant no first-round picks for the next 2 years, which means no wide receiver help as a first-round capital. And remember, Zay Flowers, if my memory's right, Kendall, you can fact-check me on this one while I'm talking through it. I think he was in the late 20s, in the early 20s, maybe 21, 22. But he was a first-round pick for the Ravens. And so my point is that there just wasn't a lot of competition that was going to come in. So even though Flowers isn't sexy, even though it's not, Amon-Ra, Jamar Chase, JJ, it's not the big boys, he finished as the wide receiver 7 last year, quietly. He gave you some very, very usable weeks. And at the end of the day, if he's your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, maybe he's in your flex if you're in a 2 wide receiver league, I think that's a really good position to be in. So now that the picks are back, we'll see what the Ravens choose to do, especially after addressing Hendrickson. But I thought Zay Flowers was a winner last week. And again, everybody knows Kenneth Walker is a good player. Everybody knows Jalen Waddle is a good player, right? So you don't have to talk about the big sexy guys. So I think it's interesting to go and talk through some of these players that are less sexy, but are probably on a lot of rosters. So let's get in, man. Let's do it. I can't put this on the screen because of the language, but I like to comment. Jamie, we appreciate you.
Yeah. Love you, Jamie.
Rafi, good to see you, brother. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I did not bring my Mardi Gras beads. They are upstairs, actually. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. So Jamie saying Zay's good for a few big games or bust. He's more of a best ball play, probably. But the truth is that Zay Flowers is on your roster somewhere, and you're probably playing him, and you're probably, if you're fortunate, you're flexing him, but you're probably starting him. And so I think there's some value there. So, Kendall, let's start at the top. And for those that are new to the show, we are going to go through some rookies on a deep dive tonight. But I've got my quarterback tiers here. They are color-coded to match the old Sleeper app. I don't know if everyone can see it, and obviously there are plenty of people listening on Spotify and Patreon, so I will talk through what you can't see on the screen. But we're going to go through some tier rankings tonight. These are my tier rankings. If you don't agree with them, that's great. If you agree with them, awesome. The beauty of this show is that we don't have to agree. That's why we do this show, is to give you guys ranges, tiers, and outcomes. I do want to talk about, of course, the number one pick, Fernando Mendoza. I have him listed on my sheet here as the University of Indiana, but we might as well just go ahead and say the Las Vegas Raiders, since that is, I would say, pretty much written in pen. I want to just ask you this question, Kendall, because I know you weren't here last week. My big question is, my big question to you is he going to be more than a high-end QB 2? Because he is going to be the 101, 102 in all Superflex drafts. I would still take Love over Mendoza. Do we agree with that? Even in Superflex.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I would think I have a hard time thinking he gets past the 102 in a Superflex league. So my question is, if you're spending the 102, do you think that you are grabbing someone that has top 12 potential, or is he going to be range of outcomes, probably a high-level QB2? Where are you at with Mendoza?
I'm thinking through it a little bit. I think he's a high floor, lower ceiling play, in my opinion. I don't think he has enough explosive throwing traits that will turn him into that QB1 range. It takes a lot in the NFL to get to that level. And even when you have the talent, it doesn't always work out, right? So you have to have the weapons and stuff around you. I definitely look at him more like I see him like a Bo Nix, but maybe a little bit worse. And I'm not a Bo Nix fan, right? I just think of where Bo Nix is ranked. I think he's athletic, but he's not as athletic as Bo Nix. I think they have somewhat similar throwing talent, good leadership traits, right? Good in the locker room. But I always saw Bo Nix as like a calm down on the ceiling, right? Unless he runs a lot every game. I don't love it. I see him somewhat similar. He has a less arm talent than Darnold, but I think he can play a similar sort of like smart QB, like the modern Darnold is a better NFL player than he is for fantasy. But he has his moments. That's kind of where I see him. So I guess to answer your question, I see him more as a high-end QB2. I don't think he has a very high bust metric. Like, I do think he's somewhat safe. He's not I'm blanking on the name. Whoever Atlanta drafted, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah.
Michael Penix.
Penix, swingy, right? Has some serious downside to him, right?
Yeah.
Mendoza is very similar to a Tyler Shuck, but he's got less reps, but he's somewhat similar, and he's going as a late first-round pick. So that's kind of where I see him. I really like that he's got a running game around him. You saw what Sam Darnold had with an elite run game with Ken Walker and Charbonnet. I think he's going to have that with Genty. And so I think they're going to have an offense that can just move the ball. And if he can just get 2 touchdowns a game, I think we're in pretty solid shape. But no, I'm not projecting a huge ceiling for him. And for those reasons, he actually sits like at the top of tier 2 for me, but he's in the mix with the other wide receivers, because if you don't need quarterback help that much, I think he's more valuable in the draft than he probably will be more often than not in the NFL and Dynasty.
I mean, I think you're spot on with something that you said. Safe. Safe is the perfect word for him, right? I don't see him. Can he run? Yes, we saw it in the national championship game. He won the game on that play. But remember this. That's college kids. I know Reuben Bain Jr. I know there's some guys that are going to be NFL picks, and they're going to be first-round picks from that Miami defense. That Miami defense was awesome. But that is 2 or 3 players across an 11-man defense versus 11 pros. Mendoza's not going to run. That's not in his. It's like Justin Herbert. Can he run? Yes. Will he run a little bit when he has to? Yes. Is he Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen? Absolutely not. So I don't think he's going to be super stiff and never get out of the pocket, but he's a very intelligent kid. He makes good reads. He makes smart decisions. grabbing was it Linderbaum, right, as the center is going to be incredibly helpful for him to understand and read protections and defenses as a rookie quarterback. So I have him at QB 18 right now. I could see him getting as high as QB 14, maybe QB 15 in my rankings, but I have him at 18. I'll be honest. I saw something that I think was the Dynasty guys rookie guide when I was reading it the other day. Shout out to those guys. They did a really nice rookie guide. It is free. If you guys want to check their stuff out, it's pretty well written. They gave a comp to Matt Ryan, which I think is fair. That. Very cerebral, pocket passer, big frame, big arm, can make all the throws. And Matt Ryan was great for years, and he was great for fantasy. But I just don't see without the rushing upside. It's the same reason we talk about certain players all the time. Can you have that cheat code, right? Like Jalen Hurts, probably not as good of a passer of the football as Mendoza will become in his career. But Jalen Hurts is going to have a higher ceiling because he runs the ball and because he gets tush pushes. You know what I mean? It's like that's just the reality of it. So,
I like that high end comp there, Jamie. I like that actually. Dak is kind of like a throwing talent, intangibles, tiny bit of athleticism.
And until Mendoza gets a CeeDee Lamb and a George Pickens around him, his ceiling's going to be a little lower, right? Like you and I talk about this a lot last year because everyone that listens to this show knows that I love Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's my guy. I think Joe Burrow has the potential, given the weapons around him, to be the overall QB1. But the only way, I've said this many times, Kendall, you know this, the only way Joe Burrow can be the overall QB1 is he has a crazy outlier touchdown season because he doesn't run. It's not in his locker. You can't outscore Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts if you don't fucking run. So I like Mendoza. I would take Mendoza at the 102. I like Joe Burrow's girlfriends. He's got a couple of them apparently. So attaboy Joey B. But here's what I will say about Mendoza. If you're at the 102 in a super flex, I wouldn't just smash the button. I wouldn't. I think depending on where, like love should be the 101 in all formats. But I do think at the end of the day, if you get Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, or Jordan Tyson to a really awesome landing spot where they can clearly be the guy, I still might consider one of those receivers and let Mendoza fall. Because again, next guys, we got to talk about rookies, not just this season, but next year, right? Dante Moore went back to college because he didn't want to play for the Jets. It's too early to talk about Arch. I think Arch is going to get steamed up because of the famous last name. I just need to see what he looks like this year in college. And then there's a couple other kids. There's a kid at South Carolina that people like, whose name is escaping me right now. The Lenoris Sellers is his name, right? There's one or two other guys that I think are going to pop up. So it's like there's quarterbacks I think next year that are coming out that on paper as of today looks like a much stronger quarterback class. So I like Mendoza. I would certainly draft Mendoza on my team in Superflex if I could, but I'm not just going to auto pick him at the 102. I'm still going to potentially shop that pick and see if I can get a better, more established quarterback. Because remember, Mendoza's still going to be a rookie. He ain't going to have great weapons around him other than Genty and Bowers, which are phenomenal weapons, but his receivers aren't sexy yet. Right? They spent a lot of money and they didn't buy any wide receivers. So I would still look at, where you can improve your team quarterback wise or what your team needs at the 102, which leads me to my question, Kendall. Are we interested in anyone besides Mendoza? And I'll put my rankings back up so everybody can see them here. I have Carson Beck at the QB2, and I'll tell you why in a couple minutes here. I want to let Kendall answer this question. And then he's in a tier by himself. In tier 3, I have Ty Simpson and Garrett Nussmeier. And in tier 4, as my QB5, I have Talon Green, and I'll be honest, I didn't rank any of the other guys because I just don't want them on my team because they're not going to be anything more than bench stashes. So are you interested in Beck, Simpson, Nussmeier, or Green at all, Kendall, or are you saying Mendoza and log out?
Nope. Honestly, Mendoza and log out. Look, every single year, and this isn't for everybody, but my favorite thing to do is to really go deep on, like, what am I doing with my 3rd round pick? What am I doing with my 4th round pick? I tend to accrue them. I sell trash for them to see if I can hit. And look, I would not do this unless I truly felt I earned it. But I feel like we as a group, me and you specifically, have been absolutely nailing these late round picks, or at least the philosophy behind them. So across the portfolio, we're like 60 to 75% hit rate across the board. And they become like actual meaningful. Like there are 4th round picks last year that were worth a 2026 second within 3 weeks before the season had started, and we ended up flipping a lot of those. I mean, goodness, you could have sold Woody Marks for a late 2026 first at some point last season. It would have happened. So I get it. There comes a point in a lot of these drafts where you're like, yeah, but like if this and this like isn't the ceiling higher, and it's like, sure, but when I look at the range of outcomes with incoming QB class in 2027, so many of these picks, even if they become somewhat interesting or relevant, are just going to be career backups, and that's fine for them, but they are going to get phased out in 27 and 28. So you have such a micro window for it to pay off. I don't see it, and I would much rather take the shot. Every year, I'll draft a tight end in my third rounder, and those are consistently hitting or at least being interesting for a pocket at a time. And you can never go wrong just drafting an RB in the third or fourth round, because teams will draft them because of need. And all it takes is 1 or 2 injuries, and oops, you're interesting for a day, a week. We'll see what happens. The talent can be pretty flat. So second round running backs this year are probably just as good as the fourth, and you never know who's going to get that pocket of opportunity, where I think even a running back I take with pick 410 has more upside than Ty Simpson. I truly believe that in an overall range of outcomes.
Yeah, I just put the tiers back up on the screen here. Here's why I told you I'd get to this. Here's why I have Carson Beck as my QB2. Because of his playing experience. And that's what the NFL is shifting towards. They don't want and as much as I hate to say it, because I'm a big Gator fan, you guys know that I'm from Gainesville, Florida. I'm always going to support Florida Gators in the NFL. But I'm also an analyst on this show, and we do this, as a side hustle. No one's going to sit here and tell you that Anthony Richardson is a superstar in the NFL, and neither am I. So the NFL is moving away from these project quarterbacks, and you look at the Bo Nixes of the world, who is made fun of because he was so old, because he was in college for. Did you know that Bo Nix played against Justin Herbert in college?
Yep.
That's how old Bo Nix is that Justin Herbert's been in the league 5 years and is on contract number 2, and Bo Nix is on his 3rd year, right? So it's like, what I'm trying to make is Carson Beck going to be a starter? No. But is someone going to take him on day 2? Probably. Because he's a decent backup. I wouldn't shock me to see the Rams take him and just let him sit for a year and see what they have, and then go sign somebody later and do that. It wouldn't shock me to see I don't know. That was the one that came to mind right away. But like somebody that's going to be able to like sit. My point is that
the backups that get to kind of maybe become something. Tyson Bagent for the Bears is one of those names that like, he's got enough traits that he could do a Malik Willis type of situation, and we've seen that before. Geno more recently has had a few of these arcs happening.
But so that's a good comp, right? Because I think the consensus right now is that Ty Simpson is going to go to the Jets at some point. I think Daniel Jeremiah's mock 3.0 came out on NFL Today, on the NFL Network today, and I'm pretty sure, I can look it up here in just a second, I'm pretty sure he had number 16 overall, Ty Simpson, going to the Jets, because they have 2 first-rounders. That is a waste of a fucking pick. Ty Simpson should not go in the first round. He's got 15 career starts under his belt. At the end of the day, sure, he runs a little bit. I think he's fine. But I'm going to put the rankings back up on the screen. I'm going to switch from the real NFL back to fantasy, and specifically Dynasty. I would take Talon Green in the 3rd or 4th round because of his rushing upside, because he broke the combine, just like Anthony Richardson did, but I'm not spending a premium pick to get him. So if he sucks and he sits on my taxi squad, no big deal. If he becomes, hopefully, what we thought Jalen Milroe would become, what we thought Joe Milton would become, fantastic, right? If he doesn't, screw it, cut him. Who cares? It's not going to hurt you to spend a 3rd or 4th round pick on somebody that could become a rushing upside guy and get you. I mean, Justin Fields was not a good prospect, and he lit up fantasy. Now he doesn't have a job. But
he might start a couple games.
Well, yeah, he'll start the first 2 or 3 games of the season. Actually, funny you said that. I'm actually, I can't believe these words are about to come out of my mouth. I'm trying to include him in a trade package right now because I have Mahomes and Knicks in a super flex, and I don't have a 3rd quarterback. And I'm like, I actually need Justin Fields for like 3 weeks. So can you, instead of giving me your 3rd round pick, can you just give me Justin Fields as part of this trade? And the guy's stoked because he knows he's never going to get anything for Fields. And I'm like, I literally need him for a month. So I don't have an interest in these quarterbacks outside of Mendoza, and I would take Talon Green because of the athleticism, the rushing upside, and maybe the hope that he gives you a month worth of something at some point in his career. And if you find, the quarterback version of Puka, then you've hit fool's gold and away you go. So let's spend some time on this show talking about what everybody really wants to talk about and hear about is the running backs and the receivers, because there are so many of them this year that are going to get drafted because it's a weak quarterback class and it's a weak tight end class. We're not going to talk about Jeremiah Love. If you don't know, Jeremiah Love is good at football. If you don't know that Jeremiah Love is going to be probably, I'm guessing, the top 4 pick to the Titans, maybe Dynasty's just not for you, and that's okay. Who's the RB2, Kendall?
For me, it's Jonah Coleman.
Okay.
It's I don't know what to make of Jadarian Price. Some people have him up there, some people don't. But for me, it's I'm betting on Jonah Coleman. I think it's a somewhat flat tier amongst a couple of them, in my opinion. Looking at your tier list, I think Emmett Johnson is interesting. I have Coleman ahead of him, but like, it wouldn't be unrealistic to say Coleman, Emmett Johnson, Jadarian Price. At least those 3 for me are in a talent group that it's more situation than talent, in my opinion. It's more landing spot because I think they all have good traits, different but still good. And it's head coach, how it goes, who gets banged up in training camp. It's so close. I'm not aggressively like trading up to get one. I think Coleman's maybe separated a little bit from me from what I've seen. But I also don't know how the NFL values him. And to be honest, sometimes I wonder how different NFL teams value the running back position in general. I think it varies team to team. But I have Coleman for now.
I mean, you could see the rankings if you're watching the show. If you're listening, I have Jonah Coleman and Emmett Johnson in my tier 2 as the RB2 and 3. Look, one of these guys, maybe not one of these 2 specific players, but, you know, Jadarian Price, Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, one of those names is probably going to Atlanta. That's a fact. Atlanta just traded Tyler Algier. They haven't brought anybody in. And as much as it's not going to impact Bijan, but they still have to have a second running back. They have to have a roster. So one of these guys is going to go to Atlanta. I wouldn't be shocked at all if one of these guys goes to Miami. Right. I think that's a realistic landing spot, given the fact that Miami is clearly playing for the future. They are sending everybody with any sort of money out the door. And ultimately, it's very clear what they're doing is giving John Eric Sullivan a chance to build his own roster and giving, Jeff Hafley a chance to coach his own team from scratch. Right. So anybody that's a holdover from Mike McDaniel is pretty much out. I see Jadarian Price, Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, Coleman, and Emmett Johnson as that next tier 2, tier 3. I know Mike Washington Jr. ran really, really fast at the combine, but just because you run, like, it's the underwear Olympics, guys. You know what I mean? Like, I still don't understand why they're not putting these guys in pads, why they're not putting on helmets. Like, you want to know how fast you're on a football field in pads? Go run in pads. It's not rocket science. Yeah. But
yeah, he probably ran himself onto a roster, but I don't see how he runs himself into like a real role. Well, look, and I feel like we've seen that a couple times.
Look, I'm going to say it because I'm going to take a tiny victory lap here. You know what I'm about to say because it is a victory lap for me. Xavier Worthy ran himself into a first-round pick, and Xavier Worthy's not worth a first-round pick.
Rashee Rice is trying to make him a first-round pick.
Rashee Rice is doing everything he can to make Xavier Worthy take his money, take his contract, and just say, "Hey,
really
you don't need your team anymore, Rashee, but we do have to pay Worthy. So can we get your money? Get some bucks."
We'll see what Carnell Tate says about it.
Yeah, maybe. So my point being is that this is a running back class. I love how you said it, flat tier. I think Coleman's probably the RB2. It wouldn't shock me if all these other guys were the RB2. I think there's 4 or 5 players in this class that could be the RB2. And I think you just don't know who it is yet. And so, you know, one thing I do want to say is just really quickly is about Jadarian Price. I have some hesitation about Jadarian Price, right? I'm going to give you a comp, and a lot of people aren't. Kendall, you live right about 10 minutes from Notre Dame's campus. You may not like this. I know a lot of people are going to hear what I'm about to say, and they're not going to like it. Roschon Johnson. Ooh. That is my comp for Jadarian Price. And it's not because I don't think Jadarian Price is a good player. I think it's the inverse of that. I think people steamed up Roschon Johnson as he's this really good player. He's big, he's strong, he's physical. He just couldn't get on the field because Bijan was just so much better at Texas. And okay, that is true. That is true. But if you're that good, and we've seen this in college football, why aren't you playing more? Why aren't they rotating you? Because college football, truthfully, is not about producing just the next pro player. They're trying to win national championship. These guys have jobs to go and get, right? So to keep, I should say, right? So at the end of the day, winning college football games, winning the national championship helps your recruiting class. It gets you more money, keeps your job, you get a bigger contract. It's about 10,000 different reasons why you want to win. My issue with Jadarian Price is similar to Roschon. If he was that good, why wasn't he competing with Jeremiah Love? Is Jeremiah Love just that much better? Probably. But I'm scared of Jadarian Price. He's never off my board. Don't hear me say like this guy's off the board, don't draft him. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't worry if Jadarian Price winds up as the RB2 and he winds up in Carolina. I would have some hesitation. I would, because Chuba's still there and he's under contract. They've still got Brooks, who was a first-round pick and has missed his entire NFL career because of two-year and season-ending injuries. And eventually I don't know if he could become something. We just don't know with Brooks. He might be nothing. He could become the guy in Carolina. Jury's still out on that one. My point is that Jadarian Price, to me, has some of those Roschon vibes where it's like, this kid's so good. He's so good. He's so good. Is he? Is he really that good? I don't know the answer to that. So I'm going to have some hesitation with Price. And I think you all should too. I think at the end of the day, I want to see obviously landing spot. I'm just going to say this and then we'll move into the wide receivers. Kendall, I can't separate these two Penn State guys. So I'm going to be honest, both of them to me, if I'm on the clock in the middle to probably the late second, and one of them's on the board, I'm going to hope that the other one gets taken, and then I'll probably just take whichever one is left. Or it might be a pivot point for me if there's somehow a good wide receiver left, that I feel like is going to have a good situation. Because Penn State was bloody awful last year.
Yeah, they were.
Awful. And I'm sorry, I understand that you don't have to be, on the best team in the college football, playoffs. You don't even have to be a team that's in the college football playoffs to make an NFL roster and to be impactful for fantasy. That's a fact. But I do have some issues when both of your starting running backs for a team that was supposed to be competing for the playoff, who just had their worst season in history, both of them were that bad? That doesn't scream, I'm going to go and be an RB2 and tell the starter, hey, I'm coming for your job. It just doesn't scream that to me. So I think that this quarterback class and this running back class is incredibly top heavy. And unless I see a really good landing spot or I continue to watch film over the next couple of weeks, I might just try to grab Mendoza, grab Love, and then just hammer wide receiver, because I think that's where the value is in this class.
Yeah, I think I agree in that the wide receiver, like it's not the most insane class of all time, but when you look at like the mid tiers of wide receiver, if you were just in some classes, we look at it as a crazy class because of how lengthy the top end is, before you get to what you might call sort of a middle tier prospect, right? But that doesn't mean the middle tier prospects in this class are worse. If you're kind of following me, right? They're still pretty good. And I think it's probably overall a better wide receiver class than anything. And your Surratt's, your Chris Bells, Braz. I mean, I like Jacoby Lane a little bit. I think all these guys that you kind of have in your wide receiver 7 through 13 kind of tier, I think all of them have some viable juice in them for some landing spots, right? More so than the running backs, even in a like. When you get to sort of your bottom tier, particularly me, when you get to Claiborne and Randall and whatnot, at that point, it's just like, I hate saying they're totally off my board, but I don't see the talent level. I at least think the wide receivers have a shot to carve out sort of a useful Jacoby Myers role in several offenses. And I want to bet on that. I think they have more explosive traits that can make something happen, where if you look at the current RB landscape in the NFL, I actually feel like there are some backups right now that are being slept on that I would rather take for nearly free than I would some of these running backs, right? If you look at some of the completely underutilized, I think I saw Jordan Mason go for a 4th round pick earlier and stuff like that in some of my leagues. There's just some guys that literally haven't even seen the field so much yet that have a little bit more juice than this running back class, because so many running backs got drafted the other year, and not all of them have even really seen the field in some sort of a way. So I do agree with you in that I'm going to start hammering wide receiver, or even a Max Clare to Michael Trigg. I'm probably taking them over the dart throw running backs, because I think the chance to them take a long-term sort of a role in an offense and become something is a little bit greater, and their chances of being replaced by someone else next year or is just a little bit lower. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it takes a while for tight ends to develop. I mean, I think we've all been a little spoiled these last couple of years with having a rookie tight end come in and basically not only be fantasy relevant, but basically be the tight end one, right? I know that McBride's not a rookie, but it took him basically a year and a half, and all of a sudden he broke fantasy this year and was the overall tight end one by a mile and a half. So yeah,
I've got a theory on this, actually.
Here we go.
I'm popping in. I've got a tight end theory. I don't want to get carried away with it. And I'll preface this by saying I'm not a Sadiq guy, but I'm combining two of my own personal takes. I haven't read this anywhere. I've been on this for a little bit now, but I think that the college landscape has changed in terms of coaching and athleticism. Okay. I'm an old school Chicago Bulls fan. Okay. I wasn't born downtown Chicago. I was born in the suburbs, but I moved down there. I'm at the Bears, the Bulls, the Brats, the Beers. I'm all about that. Okay. When people compare the LeBron to Michael Jordan thing, what I ultimately get to is you can't compare star players in different eras because it was a different game. Okay.
Agreed.
I think at the tight end position, it's a different game. Tight end usage is historically at the highest it's ever been. The amount of Super Bowl winning teams or playoff deep run teams that rely on a tight end as at least the number 2 pass catcher, I've never seen that higher in my entire life at a consistent level. I've never seen the playbook in 12 personnel schemed up the way it has been the last 2-3 years in the NFL, and the trend keeps going up. Then when I look at the young talent that started to come in the last 2 years specifically, it breaks the model because they're good way too quick, and they're good on the offensive end way too quick. And the only thing that makes sense for me to explain that is I think we have more nuanced coaching. We've got some of the best coaching we're ever going to get from an offensive style at the college level. When it was a lot more character and brawn, now we have just the cold, sterile, calculated pro farm setup, right?
Yep.
So they've got better coaching, significantly better nutrition, and they know the position is worth more in the NFL. When you add all these together, they're going to get schemed up a little bit more. 12 personnel's never been more popular, and they're just used to being a weapon already at the college level, as early as a freshman in some cases, with like your Bowers. So I think the modern tight end mold might be broken a little bit, and that I want to aggressively draft more tight ends, not early. I don't want the Sadiqs in the first round, but I want to consistently be leaving with 1 or 2 tight ends, at least one from my draft, because these third-round guys are consistently good. Look what happened last year with Gunnar Helm is getting steamed up a tiny bit. Finally, Chigakonko is freed to maybe make something happen. And these guys are darn well decent way too quickly. And so I'm becoming more of a fan of just draft a couple cheap tight ends. They're better than they used to be. They're used more often than they used to be. And this new wave is significantly better across the board than the old wave. These rookies would wipe the floor with a Dallas Goedert. So, I mean, maybe that's a hot take, but these new kids are built different. And I think they're going to hit a little bit harder.
Yeah. Well, we will cover some more on tight ends here in a bit. Let's talk through these wide receivers. Look, for me, it's the big 3, and then it's the next 3. That's what I'm kind of calling them. And then I've got a large tier here. There's a name. Actually, there's 2 names in this last tier that I think I like more than others. I'll cover that in a bit. But I'll be honest, this reminds me a lot, this class, not necessarily the talent level, maybe the talent level, but the dynasty value of 2 years ago when Marv, Neighbors, and Rome came out, and we had a big 3, and there was a lot of debate of, is Marv really truly the number 1, or is it famous last name? We don't have a famous last name in this class. So Carnell Tate from Ohio State, I have as my wide receiver 1. look, I think last year, Kendall, you know this, but if you listen to the show, folks, you'll know this, but I had Emeka Ibuka as my wide receiver 1, and he lit it up for half the season and then sort of disappeared. I have Tate as my wide receiver 1. I have Mekhi Lemon as 2, and I have Jordan Tyson as 3. Jordan Tyson might be the best route runner of all 3. But there's some injury history there, and that's going to scare some people, and it might scare a couple NFL teams to say, hey, maybe our system or our scheme or just, maybe the injury piece, so they may draft Tate or Lemon a little bit higher. I also think that all 3 of these guys are going to, I would say, guaranteed be first round players and more than likely top 15 guys. So I don't know that there's a lot to separate them right now. So my question to you, Kendall, is if you're in a single quarterback league and you have the 2, the 3, or the 4 pick, because Jeremiah Love will be the 101, are you just drafting one of these guys based off the situation? Are you drafting the guy based off the highest perceived ceiling? Or are you drafting who you think, regardless of landing spot and ranking, the best receiver is? How would you approach these 3?
They're pretty flat for me in that the tiebreaker is probably I don't even say tiebreaker. It's not really a tiebreaker. Landing spot is probably going to tell me everything. Landing spot tells me if they have what's their percentage chance to be the wide receiver 1, what's their percentage chance to be the wide receiver 2. Yeah. Right. Landings, that's a big deal, right? In landing spot. And I don't mean that like there are some teams where I'd rather have the chance to be a great wide receiver 2 is better than the wide receiver 1 in a bad offense, bad quarterback situation, right? So there's that element to think of. I'm probably going with safety for the most part because I think they're all good. I used to play the game in a much more risk reward, let's die hard. The more I've found consistent ways to just build tiny 1-2% edges, gain value in a predictable, accruable fashion to then make bigger moves and take risk where it's presented in a much more palatable fashion. I don't want to just swing for the fences. If I wanted to swing for the fences, I would just take Jordan, right? He's clearly the best prospect profile, clearly the best route runner. When healthy, it's honestly not close. Yeah, but there's risk there, real risk. And I don't like the idea of a non-risky player has this nice fun range of outcomes where it's all good, it's all profitable. And the risk when it goes from like could be slightly better than what you had anticipated versus the floor bottoms out, I don't think the loss is worth the reward. So I'm going to go with probably the safest consensus high pick. It is probably how I'm looking at it.
Let me give you 3 teams. We're going to play a game, and this game is going to be called Receivers Are Blind. Wide receivers are blind. The New York Giants, the Cleveland Browns, and the Los Angeles Rams. Don't worry about which of the 3 goes to which team. Which receiver do you want? The Giant, the Ram, or the Browns?
Brown, Giant, Ram.
That's your order. Brown, Giant, Ram. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Here's why I picked those. Because I pulled up Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft from today, the NFL Network. He's pretty darn smart. He knows what he's doing. He's plugged in. I know a lot of he has the linebacker Sonny Styles from Ohio State getting mocked in this one to the Giants. Sure. But there is a lot of steam around a wide receiver going to the Giants. All right. And we all know that, right? They're trying to put Jackson Dart in a place to be successful. Cleveland Browns, they need stuff. They need a lot of stuff, but we know the quarterback situation is a disaster. Is Todd Monken really the best coach? Who knows? Is he going to be there long term? Maybe. Is he going to be there 2 or 3 years? I don't know the answer to that. And then he's got a receiver, Mekhi Lemon, mocked to the Rams, which you're never going to be the one unless Puka misses time. You're still behind Devontae for at least a season, even though you might be the 2B. You're still the 2B to Devontae's 2A. So, and you don't know who the quarterback's going to be next season. Right?
The only thing with Lemon is that because he is more of an Amon-Ra clone and he can play in the slot, he's the one where if there's anyone that's going to be a 2, I want it to be Lemon. So if any of the other guys become a 2, because of their like X position. I'm not in love with that, but Lemon specifically, I don't mind to the Giants or that sort of play the 2 role. I think he'd be really, really nice. He'd be a much better version of like Jordan Addison type situation.
So you literally just took what I was going to say almost to a T.
Sorry.
Right? No, it's okay. It's perfect. I mean, it's great that when we disagree, because it gives the viewers and the listeners a different side to the coin. But I think sometimes it's great when there's a little bit of consensus. I would take whoever the player is at the Giants probably first. I like the offense. I like the quarterback. I like the ability to be in a big time, playmaking role. The Browns is going to scare me a little bit. I understand that is the player who clearly has the easiest path to being the guy. But again, who's the quarterback this season? Who is it next season? And who's the coach long term? Because this is Dynasty. This isn't just 1 year, redraft. And if it is somebody that goes to the Rams, I would have the Rams as my 2 spot, because ultimately, even though the quarterback is most likely going to change next year, and it's possible McVay's not there, we'll see what happens. There's lots of McVay seems like he's leaving every year and he keeps coming back. So we'll just assume he's the coach. But I think Devontae and Stafford, I think this is it. So I think you're going to get a little bit of a teeny tiny discount on whoever winds up with the Rams, because there's going to be that fear that like, well, you'll never be better than Puka. Well, Devontae's still there, so you're never going to be, like, what's his first year? I want to draft with the 103 someone that's going to go straight into my lineup and produce points for me immediately, and we all do. But the reality is that unless you have Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, who broke fantasy just like these tight ends did their rookie season, you're waiting, right? Emeka Egbuka, great first half of the season, fell off the second half of the year. JSN, garbage first half of the year. It's one of the worst trades I have ever made in my life, trading JSN away. I got Achane and I think Rome back, which isn't terrible, but it's not it's not great. I'd rather have JSN. So it's like you end up looking at these guys and saying, well, like, the year 1 outcome scares me. Wide receivers still take a little bit of time to develop. So I think whoever lands on the Rams, don't discount the fact that, yes, their year 1 production may not be perfect, but let me give you this comp. And I'm not saying that this is the exact same comp talent-wise. Luther Burden, for a while, was the number 1 wide receiver in college. People all forget that. And he was not one of the earliest picks last year. I think I have to go back and look. I think he was like wide receiver 4 or 5 in that class, 4 maybe, right? All of a sudden, DJ Moore gets traded. Caleb's playing a lot better. You've got Rome, you've got Loveland, and you've got Burden, and that is the core. And if you took Luther Burden in the late 2nd round last year, like I did, and a lot of people did, you are stoked. You're absolutely stoked because you have someone that is the Bears wide receiver 2 who could end up being the wide receiver 1, and he was the best prospect in that class coming out of college, and he dropped because I don't remember. He was older. He had some injury stuff his senior year. He only had a really great senior year at Missouri. He wasn't superstar, the first couple of years. So that's my point with these big 3 is even if someone goes to a place where the path to playing time rookie year isn't the sexiest, don't discount that. Let's talk through this, what I'm calling the next tier. For those that can not see the screen, I really like KC Concepcion. I think he's a fun player. I think he could be really good. I'll be honest, I think he's going to wind up in Miami. That's just my gut feeling. That's where I think he's going to wind up. I have him as the wide receiver 4 at the top of tier 2. I have Omar Cooper Jr. here at the top of the tier as well at wide receiver 5. I debated going back and forth between Elijah Surratt from Indiana and Denzel Boston. I have Boston at wide receiver 6 right now, but I could see that changing. So I have Surratt at the top of tier 3, but it's early. The only really give you the reason why, because again, the coach in me, let me tell you the why. I think sometimes the guys that win the national championship get steamed up a little bit. Right? There was a couple guys that came out of Washington. Rome was clearly the guy. Jalen Polk and someone else, Kendall. Who was the other receiver, if you can remember, that came out of that Washington Huskies team that lost in the national championship? Penix was the quarterback. I don't remember who that 3rd wide receiver was. I know Boston was on that team, but he was young. But like Jalen Polk got steamed up because they had got to the national championship game, and Jalen Polk's not really relevant right now, right? So that's kind of my point. So I see the talent with Surratt, but again, if he played for, Florida, who had a disgusting college football season, is he really being talked? I don't know the answer to that, right? So where are you with this second tier of guys? Because I think I would personally, and I'll shut up here in a second, I would personally take all three of these players, even, whoever the wide receiver 7 is, I would probably take over the RB2 in this class. That's what I would personally do. What about you?
Yeah, I like this tier a lot, actually. I want to buy the discount. I like them a lot. I feel like because of the lack of talent in the draft class, they're not going to have the same draft discount that you might see in a couple of places. Like they kind of fit, like, to me, like the same, Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins, Harris, Trey Harris types of stuff. But I actually think they have a little bit more upside because I think the destinations have the chance to be quite a bit better. Like you mentioned, Miami's really, really great destination. There's a couple spots where wide receiver 2s could be really, really elevated in a couple spots too. I think, you mentioned the Giants, for instance, at some point in time. So I like the tier. I almost think Concepcion, I think he's almost in a tier of his own. I like the talent plus the intangibles. I was looking at some of the off the field stuff with some of these guys just to figure out, like, hey, what are the traits that I think are going to make them, like, I kind of use traits and, like, coachability, likability to see, like, how quickly in training camp they can kind of develop a rapport with both coaching staff plus others to kind of give them an elevated shot at an aggressive early career spike. And Concepcion, I don't know if you looked at it, he struggled with, I think, a lisp of some type. I don't know if it was medical or speech pathology, but, like, overcoming that in college and kind of a thing, I think it introduces him. It gives him a thing in the NFL and in the locker room. I think there's a point to knowing him, and plus the talent. I actually think he could, if he goes to the Dolphins, I think he could really emerge and be something not like truly special, but quite good and extremely productive for where he goes in the draft. Cooper, I thought, like, I feel like a lot of us might be thinking this way on Cooper, where he's kind of our little sweetheart. We see him going into the first round. We like that his quarterback isn't like some phenom, so he had to earn his targets quite a bit. But everyone seems to be on Cooper at this point. So
Yep.
I don't think I'm going to have a lot of them on my team, but mostly because everyone loves him, and IU just won the title. I mean, I was on campus at IU Bloomington, so, like, I served a few of these guys drinks at some point in time as true story. So it's fun seeing them, but I probably won't own as much of them as I'd like to. Cooper Jr. is kind of like my Ricky Pearsall of the class. I just love him. And then Denzel Boston. Washington's really done a lot with the program. Great coaching. Obviously, they have high-level competition. I like what they're doing in Washington. They're becoming a little bit of a wide receiver university. I mean, consistently, so many guys coming out of there were good. I'm a Rome guy, but I think there was plenty of other talent in there too. What's the Bucks guy was from there? Who am I thinking of? Neck injury, came back. He's
Jalen McMillan. That was the third wide receiver I was trying to remember on that national championship team.
Yeah. So I mean, pedigrees of high level talent coming out of there that translate into the NFL. I see that coming back for more. So I agree with that tier. I like them all. I don't want to leave a draft without one of the three. And I do think I'm trading down quite often. I found my trade down piece. I'm off Sadiq, and outside of, like, in Superflex, I like for the first 5 picks. I like that first tier of wide receivers. If there's any chance that Concepcion, Omar Cooper, Denzel Boston, whoever from that group ends up being a few picks later, I just want to trade down and profit, probably. Give me a 27-second to move down and take the other guy. I think that's a move I would consider making. Maybe taking a buy low role player. You want to give me Jaden Reed and your 109 to move up to the 107 or something like that. That's kind of a trade that I would do. So I don't really care who I get from them without knowing landing spot, but I would like one of them.
I mean, I talked about this last week a little bit, and I'll just bring it up again. So for those that heard this last week, apologies for those that haven't. In the 2-minute drill, I talked about the dynasty trade up, trade down scenario. It's very clear to me, Kendall, you nailed it. In a super flex league, if you're not in the first 5, you are missing out on Love, Mendoza, and the big 3. So the draft really starts at the 106. But I do think that the 106, again, landing spot dependent, is going to be three wide receivers, is going to be 6, 7, and 8, in my opinion. There are going to be some leagues where you see a running back sneak in there. There are going to be leagues where you see Sadiq in there. But I don't see, as of today, March 17th, a world where Concepcion, Cooper, and then insert wide receiver here are not the 6, 7, and 8. So in my mind, if you're in 9 through 12, I'm trading down. That's a flat tier. And that's what I made the argument for last week in the 2-minute drill. If you have the 111, if you have the 112, I would find someone in your league that has the 204 and the 206, and I would trade them. And I would get both those picks to get 2 guys out of that tier than just get 1. That's what I would do personally. Because I think you'll get the allure of, oh, somebody wants to give up a first-round pick. I'll happily give you 2 seconds. But you're getting the same guys. It's the same pocket of players. So I understand that not everybody has 2 early firsts in all of your leagues, so that trade scenario is unique. But I might take the early second and a 27 second for that 111 or 112 and hope that second turns into an early one, or I would package it and try to go get a veteran. I would try to go grab somebody that you believe in that's late. So, but my point is that in my mind, I see Concepcion, I see Omar Cooper Jr., and I see a third wide receiver as the next tier. I already mentioned that I would take all of those guys over the running back 2 in this class. I'm not going to give you a name, Kendall, for a comp because I think they're very different players, but I am going to give you a name that you'll think is funny because of my guy comp. Omar Cooper Jr. is going to be my Jaden Higgins this year.
Okay.
My love for Jaden Higgins. I believe in the talent of Jaden Higgins, and it took a while this first year, this rookie year, but it looks very much like he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in Houston. He's got the ability to make a year 2 leap and be pretty fantasy relevant. Even if he doesn't crack the top 24, I think he's a top 36 guy, which means you're playing him every week, either in a flex or in a 3 wide receiver set. I do think I'm going to have a lot of Omar Cooper Jr., whether it's by draft or whether it's by trade down, trade up, depending on what I'm doing. And I think there are some similarities in their skill sets, right? Bigger body guys, contested catch guys, just physical, can win. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think that's an interesting place. Daniel Jeremiah has Jordan Tyson here at 14 to the Ravens. That would be an interesting place to go. He has Omar Cooper Jr. at 16 to the Jets. Again, don't take players based off of don't not take a player because of a bad situation currently, because talent wins out and the situation could change dramatically, right? If you had Sam Darnold on your roster, you thought he was dead, and he had a pretty good fantasy season for you this year, and actually truly the last 2 years, right? So and then KC Concepcion, they have it 19 here to the Panthers, which I could see the Panthers taking another player. I know it's not sexy. We don't love Bryce Young, but at the end of the day, Tet's clearly the one there. I like Jalen Coker, but I think whoever they take, if they were to take a first-round wide receiver, probably becomes the wide receiver 2 by midseason, if not earlier. So, and the Panthers, look, we shit all over them for a long time, but they weren't bad last year. They're in a terrible division, right? So put them in the NFC West or and let's put them in the NFC North and let's see how they do. But my point being is that they're going to be a good football team. They're going to win games. They're going to score points. And you're probably going to have touchdowns for whoever goes there because Bryce ain't a big runner. So that's where, there's a lot of value here. Obviously, first round wide receivers. And that precludes the Bills. Don't rule out the Bills to take another receiver because Keon Coleman, clearly not their guy. So if you get a player that lands on the Bills in the first round or even in the early second, even if it's a day 2 pick for the Bills, right? It's DJ Moore and then it's insert name here because they hate Keon Coleman. Kincaid's okay. Dawson Knox doesn't really add anything. I mean, it's Josh Allen and James Cook. That's it. So that's where I'm at. With this wide receiver class, I want to, before we pivot to the tight end here, you talked about Chris Brazel. Sorry to Mrs. Brazel for butchering your son's name. Jacoby Lane. I like Jacoby Lane. I have him at wide receiver 11, but the only reason I have him that far down is because I just don't know this class yet, right? These are all day 2 picks, day 3 picks, so hopefully they're early day 3 picks, but we'd love to see him in round 2 and round 3. And some of these guys will be. Chris Bell is a name to keep an eye on. I've comped him to Debo. He kind of looks like Debo. He certainly plays like Debo. He's big, strong. He's physical. He's been injured, which is why I think he's not getting as much love. But I like Jacoby Lane. I think he's a good player. Again, when you've got a Brian Thomas Jr. who's kind of getting overshadowed by Malik Neighbors, BTJ had a great season and then had a disaster of a season in year 2. So we still don't know what BTJ is yet. But Jacoby Lane, again, being overshadowed by Mekhi Lemon. It's different when it's Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love because there's only one running back on the field. But there's multiple wide receivers on the field. And I think Jacoby Lane is a good player and would be a much higher prospect if Mekhi Lemon was a totally different. Maybe he goes to UCLA instead of USC, right? He's at a different school. So don't sleep on Jacoby Lane. Don't sleep on Chris Bell. And don't sleep on Elijah Surratt. Kendall, you have said it twice already, if not 3 times. You are out on Sadiq, or not out, but you are not taking him in the mid-first round, which is where he is projected into our dynasty drafts in that kind of 6 to 9, 106 to 109 range. Is it just too expensive, or you just don't think the talent is there? What's your anti-Sadiq take?
I hate saying both, but it really is both. Because it's not like a little bit of both. It is 100% of both equals 200. The price is stupid. I mean, the price makes no sense, right? Dalton Kincaid is also not quite the physical freak, but like no shabby, and we still put him at the 1-2 turn like we're supposed to. I'm the guy that's saying recency bias has an actual take to it, right? Because I think they're better, more athletic, better coaching. But Sadiq just has no college production. And I scouted tight end pretty heavily the last 2 years. So maybe I'm biased that I wasn't scouting as heavily the previous years, but I did look back to develop, like everyone says model. I'm not fancy enough to have a legitimate sort of algorithmic program developed. I don't got the funding or the time for it, but I've got some pretty good applied math and I know how to use it, right? My challenge is, when I study guys like Harold Fannin, okay, I didn't like Fannon's tape, but I could not deny the damn production. It was just consistent all day, every day. And like, oops, Harold Fannon's a stupid breakout, right? And I didn't necessarily know, but I drafted enough of Fannin because I didn't know what to do other than like the production is the production is the production. I don't know what to do with a Sadiq that is this physical freak. And I don't know. I don't think he just all of a sudden became that physical freak just for the combine, right? I assume he was kind of like that for a while, but why is the production not there, right? Let me tell you this. DK Metcalf, I've never been a fan. I never will be. But he is just as much of a physical freak and a combine freak as Sadiq, and yet he's never been good. Even when given all the opportunity in the damn world, the guy's just not NFL smart enough. He telegraphs his routes. A smart defender can just eliminate all that physicality and has been for quite some time now, and he's never fully broken out, even though he should win every one-on-one matchup. I think tight end is a harder position to learn with more nuance, and I haven't seen the production. And I think his ability to use that physical freakness to be, I don't know, just a good NFL asset, but not necessarily a dynasty fantasy football freak. I don't think it has to translate. Kyle Pitts is a significantly better pass catcher than Sadiq is. Significantly.
Yep.
Oronde Gadsden is a better pass catcher than Kenyon Sadiq. Okay? I mean, there's guys that are less physical freaks, but they have a better knack for catching the ball, running routes, and playing offense in the NFL than Kenyon Sadiq, in my opinion. And I don't like guys from Oregon. Frankly, I start to package Oregon with Tennessee, where they just manufacture offense in a very creative, very fun way that historically just doesn't translate as well to the NFL. It's too kitschy. It's too manufactured. It's not an NFL offense, in my opinion. So I have so many reasons to say, you know, if he wasn't steamed up as much, would I love to take him in round 2? Absolutely. Sign me up. But it'll never get to me there. And at the end of the day, he's still just a tight end. He's still just a tight end. So the fact that even if he has an okay season, he literally might have a fine NFL season and never see my starting roster in year 1 and 2. Like, that's just way too much for a first-round pick.
Yeah, so I love the Kyle Pitts comp because that's where I was going to go with the negative, the anti-take, right? Like Kyle Pitts also broke the combine, Florida Gators. So again, always going to root for the Gators, but wide receiver, excuse me, he was basically Florida's wide receiver his senior year because they didn't have anyone. That Florida team was good, not great, and he was the number 1 pass catching option. Tight end 7 his rookie season, and then disaster the next 3, and then he finally gives us a tight end 2 season. Here's what I'm going to say about Sadiq. I'm not going to give you the exact I'm super pro Sadiq because I've already mentioned there are a lot of wide receivers in this class. There's Jeremiah Love and there's Fernando Mendoza that all should be drafted over him. But if you don't have Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Colston Loveland, or Tyler Warren, do you really care who your tight end is? Because I don't. Even Harold Fannin, who I know a lot of people like, even Oronde Gadsden, who had big moments last year, are they clearly the tight end 5? Could they be the overall tight end 1? I don't think so. So if you're telling me that after the first 4 guys in the league, that no one else really matters, and that's not to say that they don't matter, but it's basically a very small PPG difference, and it's a small overall points per season finish in terms of a delta, then I'm in on Sadiq. Because I want the kid that's athletic. I want the guy that gets contested catches. I want guys that's going to be able to win at the line of scrimmage and get off the block. And let me give you some teams, Kendall. Does this change your opinion? And it's okay if the answer is no. The Rams at 13.
Nope.
Okay. The Eagles at 23.
Nope.
The San Francisco 49ers at 27.
Still no.
And the Chiefs at 29.
All right, Chiefs, you got me. Chiefs, you got me interested. All right, there's. I'm not gonna lie that Patrick Mahomes does move the needle for me in Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid ways, but you finally got me.
These are 4. The reason I picked those 4 teams is because all 4 need a tight end, and all 4 are considered high-powered, good offenses to be a part of. Right? The Chiefs. This is probably the last dance, the Michael Jordan last dance for Travis Kelce. The contract says that. His personal life says that. His age says that. The Niners, great offensive system. I love George. I got his shirt hanging in my closet. He ain't going to be around forever. The Eagles, Dallas Goedert signed a 1-year deal? Come on. In that offense, especially if A.J. Brown gets traded and they bring in Sadiq. And then the Rams, with that offense with McVay, Kendall, I'm not saying like I'm trying to change your mind. What the point by bringing up those 4 teams that I'm trying to make is I think people are going to get really excited about Kenyon Sadiq if he lands on one of those 4 teams. And maybe he does get overdrafted, which opens up value for you if you're at the 107 and one of these receivers falls to you that you didn't think would because he goes at 106. Because we talked about it last week. 106 is where the draft starts if you are in a super flex league. If you're at a single quarterback league, the draft starts at 105 because Love, Tate, Lemon, and Tyson are the first 4 picks. And then if you're in Superflex, throw Mendoza in there. That's pretty much a fact at this point. Even in March, that's probably going to be the truth, right? So I think that if you're in that 5, 6, 7, 8 range, that's where Sadiq's going to go. I'm with you, Kendall. I would rather take him at 8, 9 if I could. Because then at that point, once those receivers are really off the board, I'm not going to trade up for him. But I think if you've got Sadiq in one of those situations, I think guys are going to get excited about him. I think he's going to get drafted high. And I think you're going to have people that say, look, the athletic profile is there. He's in a high-powered offense. He's got target share. I think you're going to have people that get excited. And I'm not one of them that's going to overdraft him, but if I'm on the clock at the 7, 8, 9, and Concepcion and Omar Cooper Jr. are both gone, I would give that a hard look. Personally, that's what I would. I would definitely take him over the running backs, and I would consider some of those receivers. I would consider him over some of those receivers because I think that's where my brain is today. A lot can change in the next month. Let's talk about Eli Stowers really quickly, because I'll be honest, Kendall, I'm probably not going to have a lot of Sadiq, because again, I'd rather take Stowers at the early part of the second round and take the discount and grab a wide receiver over Sadiq. I'm excited about Stowers. I know people are excited about Sadiq, but let me give you those same 4 teams, right? The Rams, I'm going to take off the board because I don't think they take Eli Stowers at 13. But let's say the Eagles, the Niners, and the Chiefs are still in play. Are you excited about Eli Stowers if he's on the Texans? Or are you excited about him because he's landing spot? Where are you with him? Because I think he has sort of elevated himself, and I have him in my rankings in his own tier as the tight end 2 by himself. I think that's close to consensus right now. Where are you with Stowers?
Well, I mean, he goes to Vanderbilt, so he gets at least a 1% bump from me. Don't know why those folks didn't give me a scholarship. Probably should have. All right. Come on. I know I'm not related to anybody in the university, but come on, give me a shot here to the Vandy crowd. Stowers, I like him quite a bit. I mean, he fits the profile of, I think, a talented pass catching weapon that I think is going to be just decent for the NFL. And I don't think he's close to the potential of Sadiq, but I do think that I would rather take the cheaper player if they have a decent landing spot in this case. He falls in a range where, in at least the mock drafts right now, where, yeah, it's more palatable cost. Opportunity cost is a lot lower. So he's my favorite tight end in the class. I'm not saying like I hate Sadiq so much. I'm saying Stowers is better than him. I won't go there. But for the cost, yeah, I like him a lot better there. So I do like Stowers more as a, once everything dries up in sort of the early to mid second, that's when I'm taking a look at Stowers. If I'm staring on the barrel of the wide receivers that I like have gone, I'm taking Stowers over the running backs. I actually just think he's just got more upside. To be honest, I'm taking Max Clare over the running backs at that point too, just depending on landing spots. So I like Stowers. I don't have like a ton to say on him other than he just fits the profile of guys that I typically draft. I think they're a plus tight end. They're a plus on the offensive side of the ball. And I think there's enough decent landing spots where, because he's just not the guy compared to Sadiq, I think maybe he drops in value a little bit. I hope that he gets put in the same tier list as Claire and Trigg, and that because they're in the same tier list, they fall to like the 3rd somehow or something like that, or like the late 2nd. That would be a freaking dream.
That's dreaming. That's dreaming.
Probably not happening, but I'll put it this way. I'll fade Sadiq from the tier list perspective, but I'll be more aggressive on Stowers over probably similarly ranked wide receivers.
My early lean is that Stowers winds up in the 201 to 204 range.
Yeah, it kind of a separate tier almost in and of his own. I see that a lot too.
Yeah, I see the 201 to 204 depending on your league size, 10 versus 12, maybe the same range, 10 and 12. I'll be honest, that's who I am targeting in this draft for areas, for places on my dynasty roster where I need a tight end. Because again, I just would rather take the upside. We don't know landing spots yet, but I would rather take the upside of what I believe these wide receivers' ceilings will be. Because look, guys, remember this, fans of the show, a wide receiver, if they were equal to a tight end, is always going to have the higher ceiling. Even in the heyday of Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, when they were first-round picks in your redraft leagues, and they were rightful first-round picks in your redraft league, if they'd been a wide receiver, they were still finishing in that, wide receiver 2, high upside, but like wide receiver 12 to 15 range. That's where they were finishing. So I think you're going to have to remember that, because again, tight end is that onesie position. It's just like running back. Oh, I got to get a running back. My team needs more running backs. Oh, I could have the next guy at tight end. Do you really care if you have the tight end 5 on your team? Is that winning you a championship? No, it's not. So it's like, don't burn the pick because you need to have a tight end. Give yourself the player that's going to have the highest upside. So I'm targeting Stowers in drafts where I own that 201 to 204 pick, whether it's mine or an acquired pick. That's where I would like to draft him and shoot for upside with that wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
in the second half of the round.
It's worth mentioning on Stowers' particular. There's a reason why I think he's like a safe, solid pick, and that like his NFL comp is a pass catcher. Okay, he profiles like an Evan Ingram, undersized, has speed. It was his combine time was 4.45, 4.51, I think. Probably look it up real quick, but he's quick. He's a pass catcher. He's quick, but also undersized as a blocker. So with tight end, you want someone who's going to be drafted to a role, and that role to be fantasy relevant. He's going to be drafted similar to like how Oronde Gadsden was drafted. He's more athletic and fast than he is an inline blocker.
Yeah.
He's going to be used that way. And because of that, he should get on the field as a pass catcher early. If he gets that decent role where the team needs him to be that pass catcher, the chances that he can have a much more significant elevate, like Sam Laporta kind of burst onto the scene a little bit. He can absolutely do that for a team that it ends up in. There's other tight ends where they have a mixed skill set, and you don't really know what their role is going to be on the team. Stowers, you're going to know his role based on who drafts him, and you can draft with confidence in that role. Makes him an easy pick.
I'm going to be honest. I see Sadiq or Stowers winding up with 49ers. I do. I think the Niners are going to take somebody, even if they may not take Sadiq. Sadiq may not be on the board by the time the Niners pick, but like, I know they just re-signed Jake Tonjes, and that's fine for the season, right? But like, is that really going to be your long-term answer when George goes? I think they take Tonjes for that. I think it's a year, maybe it's a 2-year deal. I think Tonjes got, and he's a good football player, and he helps, and he's not going to be, atrocious. He's not a blocking tight end that's not capable of catching passes and touchdowns, but they're going to take somebody at some point to prepare for life after George. The Chiefs would be wise to take somebody and prepare for life after Kelsey because they've not made a financial commitment to Noah Gray. They haven't. And so I think you're looking at, unique situations with certain teams, that would be attractive. The Rams, I would think, would take a tight end if they pass. And I would think the Rams will take a receiver at 13 and try and win the Super Bowl. This is Devontae and Stafford's last season, in my opinion. So I think if the Rams take a skill position guy, they're taking a receiver more than they're taking a tight end. And they'll figure that part out later. Because the one thing the Rams have always done is traded picks to go get veterans. Right. So they'll figure that piece out at some point. So I think for right now, Stowers is a kid that I think probably winds up in a good situation. I think Sadiq probably winds up in a good situation. We'll go from there. The show's running a little long, so I want to kind of wrap it up here. But I think there's some other names, right? I think you've mentioned Max Clare a couple times. We didn't get a chance to talk about him tonight, but I like Michael Trigg. I think he's interesting. I know a lot of people are like Justin, and I don't know if I'm saying it Jolly or Holly, but either way, the kid from NC State. There's a lot of people that like him. I think that's kind of where the list ends. I know if you go and jump on all the different websites, they'll have all the tight ends ranked, 1 through 6, 1 through 10, 1 through 15, however many they've got on their personal site. But Michael Trigg is an interesting name. You mentioned maybe using some of your third-round picks, on tight ends. If I have a third round and Trigg's on the board, I'm absolutely going to take him because at that point, I'm done with wide receivers, so I'm taking running backs and tight ends and just hoping that I find a Kyle Manung guy at running back, right? Or I find an Oronde Gadsden who was a third-round pick last year, so fourth-round pick. He might have gone on your waiver wire depending on the size of your league and your draft. So I think those are some interesting names to keep in mind. And we'll continue to break these rookies down over the next couple of weeks. We will continue to do more deep dives on these players. And, of course, as new information with trades and free agency comes about, we will get you all ready, prepped, and primed for your dynasty drafts here coming up in about a month. Thank you, Jamie Pirog. It's pronounced Joe Lee. So his mom commented on my YouTube and corrected us. So you must have offended Mama Jolie because she felt the need to correct you. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Kendall, I don't want the show to go all night, so we're gonna wrap it. But if you want to hit me up in the green room, I would be interested in having a discussion about Jaden Reed.
Yeah, maybe
I would be interested in discussing Jaden Reed in the annexation of Puerto Rico League because I feel as though he is an asset that I could be tempted to move on from.
Yeah, you need a different solution than Reed. He's not. You don't think he's a bad player, but he's not doing enough for your team. So this could be a win-win.
I also have Matthew Golden on that roster. I could use a veteran. I could use a couple of picks. So I think there is a trade that exists there for us. I've got, just for those that want to get excited, at least feel like you're part of our league, I've got Brock Purdy, Austin. That's how my brain's working right now. Apologies, Mrs. Genty. Ashton Genty, Kinshawn Judkins, Devonta Smith, Emeka Ibuka, Jaden Higgins, Colston Loveland, and I have 3 flex spots that I need to fill out. I have Jordan Love as a quarterback, so I have Jaden Reed, and I have Matthew Golden. I would like to move one of them. So, yes, I think we could look at something here afterwards. So that's going to do it for the show. As always, please message us on Sleeper at P Ruskin at, what are you, KendallTFFT?
That's me.
Yep, KendallTFFT.
Yeah, should be on the screen, I think, in the title card there.
We have leagues that we are forming all the time for Dynasty. If you want to come and play in our league, if you were listening to the show, you are probably super tuned in and would be a good asset for our leagues. Certainly reach out to us on Discord. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the show grow. It helps us continue to grow. And it helps us to continue to do this every week and bring you guys more content. We know that's what this is all about. DM me. I mentioned this last week. I'll mention it again, but I also am a writer. I've got written articles. I've had a couple people reach out this last week asking for my written content. I should have a new article coming out about some additional information that we didn't get to tonight about landing spot and where to target certain players in your draft. That's my article this week. So if that interests you, hit me up on Sleeper at P Ruskin and we will get you that information. For all of us here at the Get Right Fantasy Network, for myself, for Kendall, this has been another episode of The Extra Point. We appreciate y'all being here. We will catch you next week. We out.
Fantasy is the play. Marking nothing, but I tune every Friday. Strategies provided, I will lock in every way. So go